So the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has just decided that maybe, possibly, perhaps, we should think about doing something about the fact that every child in Britain is essentially carrying around a pocket-sized anxiety machine that's algorithmically designed to destroy their attention span and self-esteem. Revolutionary stuff, really. Sir Keir Starmer's announced he's launching a consultation into an Australian-style social media ban for anyone under 16, and the response has been, shall we say, mixed. On one side, you've got parents and campaigners practically weeping with relief that someone's finally acknowledged the problem. On the other, you've got critics absolutely tearing into him for kicking the can down the road with yet another consultation when we've already got mountains of evidence that social media's doing to children's brains what a toddler does to a freshly painted wall. Spectacular mess, basically. Quick favour, if you're already hooked, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Over 94% of you haven't yet. It's completely free, takes 1 second, and honestly means the world to us here at British Mirror. Cheers if you did. Right, let's dive into this absolute car crash of a policy announcement. Now, before we get too deep into the politics of this thing, let's establish what we're actually talking about here. Keir Starmer's proposed ban would restrict young Britons under 16 from accessing platforms like Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. Sounds simple enough, right? Just stop children from scrolling through endless feeds of impossibly perfect influencers, dangerous challenges, and algorithm-generated rabbit holes that make conspiracy theorists look positively reasonable. Easy. Except it's not, is it? Because this is Britain, where we can't even agree on whether water's wet without forming a select committee and commissioning a 3-year study. The announcement came on Monday, with Starmer deploying that classic politician's phrase that means absolutely nothing whilst sounding vaguely decisive. We need to do more to protect children. That's why we are looking at a range of options and saying no options are off the table. Translation, we've noticed there's a problem with thinking about maybe doing something, but we're not actually committing to anything concrete because that might upset someone. Brilliant, truly inspiring leadership. And the reaction? Well, actress and online safety campaigner Sophie Winkleman, who's been banging this drum for ages, absolutely tore into the decision when she appeared on GB News. Speaking with the kind of exasperation normally reserved for watching someone try to assemble flat-pack furniture without reading the instructions, Winkleman said she was feeling a little bit more hopeful a couple of days ago when he said nothing's off the table. But now she's a little bit disappointed because it looks like Starmer's more interested in having a consultation than actually doing anything. Which, fair point, really, because when has a government consultation ever moved at anything faster than glacial pace? But here's where Winkleman gets properly fired up, and honestly, she's got a point. She told GB News, "I'm not really sure why we need a consultation when we've got all the country's doctors, teachers, police saying this is a national emergency in childhood, and they're all backing it." And that's the crux of it, isn't it? We've got medical professionals, educators, law enforcement, basically everyone who works with children professionally, all saying the same thing. Social media is absolutely devastating to young people's mental health and development. So why on earth do we need another consultation to establish what we already know? Winkleman went further, saying she's worried that he's kicking it into the long grass, which is political speak for conveniently forgetting about something until everyone stops paying attention. She stressed that we now do have causation, and we have enough evidence that this is a disaster for children. Not just correlation, mind you, but actual causation. We're not just noticing that kids who use social media are anxious and depressed, we're understanding that social media is actively causing that anxiety and depression. The evidence is there, it's been mounting for years, and yet here we are, consulting about whether we should maybe think about possibly doing something. Now, let's talk about the arguments against a ban, because they're absolutely fascinating in their desperation. One of the main ones is that children need access to platforms for safety resources like Childline and the NSCPC. Winkleman's response is chef's kiss perfect. I'm baffled by the argument that children need access to things like Childline and the NSCPC, when they can do that on the internet. We're not saying don't have the internet, we're saying don't have harming algorithms fed by social media. See, this is what drives people mad about these debates. Nobody's suggesting we cut children off from the internet entirely, lock them in a cave and make them communicate via smoke signals. We're talking specifically about platforms designed to be addictive, that use sophisticated algorithms to keep young people scrolling, comparing, and feeling progressively worse about themselves. And Winkleman's breakdown of what these platforms actually do is genuinely chilling when you think about it. She talks about TikTok, which destroys the mind's ability to focus, quite aside from the harmful videos that children are seeing. Think about that for a second. We've created technology that's literally damaging children's capacity for concentration, turning their brains into goldfish that can only handle 15 seconds of bursts of information. Then there's Snapchat and Instagram, which she describes as making children feel awful about themselves. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, is it? But the example she gives really hammers home how insidious this all is. Picture this: a young girl searches for a smoothie recipe, perfectly innocent, probably trying to be healthy. The algorithm sees this, makes some calculations with its cold, unfeeling robot brain, and thinks, oh, she's interested in what she eats. Maybe she's worried about her weight. And suddenly this kid's feed is absolutely flooded with weight loss videos, exercise regimes, before and after photos, all the toxic diet culture that can trigger eating disorders. She went looking for a smoothie recipe and ended up on a fast track to potentially life-threatening mental health issues. That's not a bug, that's a feature. These platforms are designed to push engaging content, and unfortunately, content that preys on insecurity is incredibly engaging. And you know what? He's absolutely right. The fact that a government minister can unilaterally decide to postpone elections should worry everyone, regardless of their political affiliation. Today, it might be Labour using this power when they're unpopular. Tomorrow, it could be the Conservatives. The day after, it could be whoever else manages to win power. The principle matters more than the party. Even the Electoral Commission, the independent body responsible for overseeing elections in the UK, has raised concerns about these delays. They've outlined that the power to postpone elections should only be used in exceptional circumstances, like the COVID pandemic, and they've questioned whether a local government reorganisation meets that threshold. Think about that for a moment. The official electoral watchdog, the people whose literal job is to ensure fair and proper elections, are saying, hang on, this doesn't seem right. That's not partisan opposition, that's professional concern from the experts who understand how democracy is supposed to function. And here's what makes this entire situation even more galling. This is the second year in a row that local elections have been delayed. The government did this last year, they're doing it again this year, and there's absolutely nothing stopping them from doing it again next year, if it's still politically convenient. We're establishing a precedent here, a dangerous one, where elections can be postponed whenever the government decides it's a bit awkward to hold them. That's not how democracies are supposed to work. Elections are meant to be fixed, predictable, unavoidable. They're meant to be the mechanism through which politicians are held accountable whether they like it or not. Let's talk about what this means for the actual people affected. Because 4 million Britons aren't just statistics, they're real people with real concerns about their local areas who are being denied the opportunity to have their say. Some of these councillors will now be serving 7-year terms. 7 years! That's longer than most parliamentary terms. That's longer than many people stay in the same job or the same house. That's an entire generation of primary school children going from reception to year 6 without their local councillors facing re-election. How can anyone pretend that's democratic? How can anyone claim with a straight face that this is just about administrative convenience? And let's consider the timing, because it's rather suspicious, isn't it? Labour are currently experiencing what can only be described as a polling catastrophe. They won a massive majority in the last general election, partly because the Conservative vote collapsed, and partly because of widespread desire for change after years of Tory government. But since taking power, they've struggled to maintain popular support. Various policy decisions, economic challenges, and internal party tensions have led to approval ratings that would make even Liz Truss blush. And now, facing local elections where they were expected to lose significant numbers of council seats, suddenly there's an urgent need to postpone democracy. The optics are absolutely terrible. Now, the government would argue, and probably will argue, that they're caught in an impossible situation. If they proceed with elections whilst restructuring local government, voters might be confused about what they're voting for, what areas their councillors will represent, and how the new structures will work. That confusion could lead to lower turnout, spoiled ballots, and general chaos. Better, they'd say, to postpone until everything is sorted and voters can make informed decisions. That argument has some merit, genuinely it does. But here's the counter-argument. If the restructuring is creating such chaos that elections cannot be held, perhaps the problem is the restructuring, not the elections. Perhaps the government should have planned this better, should have timed things differently, should have ensured that democratic processes could continue uninterrupted whilst administrative changes happened in the background. There's also a broader question about what message this sends to the British public about their democracy. We live in an age where trust in institutions is at historic lows, where conspiracy theories flourish, where people genuinely question whether their vote matters or whether the whole system is rigged.